What's up, trade crew? Welcome back to HVAC R&D, hosted by Rhydon. Tonight, I have a product engineer from a major manufacturer joining me to discuss the next generation of cold climate heat pump technology. So, let's get it going. Yeah, come on. This episode of the HVAC R&D podcast is powered by Bosch Home Comfort, your trusted partner for innovative HVAC solutions. To all of you listening, thank you and welcome to HVAC R&D. I appreciate you tuning in and giving me a chance to spend some time with you. I am based in North Carolina, and HVAC R&D is focused on research and development within the trades. My goal is to help foster and build a supportive and collaborative HVAC and trades community by learning from the past and embracing new technology and ideas for the future. Please make sure to smash that like and subscribe button while you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform. And if you're on social media, please follow the show on Instagram and TikTok at hvac.rnd and on LinkedIn, Trade Hounds, and Facebook as the HVAC R&D podcast. You can catch new episodes on Fridays at 5 p.m. Eastern and 2 p.m. Pacific whenever they're available. Don't forget to also check out the HVACRD.com vendor hub for more information on sponsors Bosch Home Comfort and Global The Source, as well as discounts from BetterHelp, Chirp, Service Titan, and my newest partner, SkillCat. Once you're done there, go grab some Cajun Joe's Bayou Spice and other cool gear in the R&D swag shop, and be sure to join the mailing list at the bottom of the page to be updated for all things HVAC R&D. So trade crew, today I'm excited to welcome Trevor Shane, a seasoned professional from Bosch Home Comfort. Trevor has been instrumental in promoting Bosch's innovative HVAC solutions, including the new IDS Ultra cold climate heat pump, which sets a new standard for performance in extreme temperatures. And I'm excited to dive into his journey into the industry, Bosch's cutting edge technology, and how the company is giving back to the trade community. So Trevor, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Rhydon.
Glad you can make it. I'm sorry to hear that you've been a bit under the weather for the last couple of days. Unfortunately, I can't send Trevor any of Cajun Joe's famous peach brandy to help with the sore throat, but you never know. We might get closer on a holiday season sometime soon.
Yeah, that would be nice, a little hot toddy.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'm doing better now, so that's good.
So we're less than a week to Christmas. I know we were speaking a little before the show. You have transitioned your life and everything over to the East Coast to be part of Bosch and continuing to grow your career there. But you're originally a Michigan boy and you were back home this week. So
yeah, that's right.
Any fun stuff coming up for the holiday season for you? Any plans, traditions you're looking forward to?
Well, for me, I'm looking forward for it to be over, honestly. For me, it's a lot of chaos, really. It feels like a ton of chaos. So I'm the youngest of three, so I always have to do all the traveling. So like you said, I'm in Massachusetts, but the majority of my family is in Michigan, and my wife's family as well. So it kind of seems like the never-ending road trip when I go back. for the holidays. So we got to go to my mom's house. We got to go to my brother's house and my dad's for Christmas, and then we got to go to my wife's parents and grandparents, and then somehow make it back before New Year's and get back to work. So I'll be glad just before New Year's when I'm back home and I finally get to rest. But it'll be good to see everybody.
It's always good to see everybody. But I was gonna say, now, do you guys drive since you have to be so many different places, or do you fly home?
Yeah, so I'm a true Midwesterner. I pack up the car and we drive. Yeah, I got all the leg room I want. I get to listen to whatever music I want, and usually not many delays.
No, typically not. I know we fly some, but even down here, it's always, if I can pack up and go. More like if it's within 12 hours and I can pack up and go, we're gonna be there for more than a day. Yeah, I'm probably gonna
Hmm.
drive. Just makes life
Yeah, that's
easier.
about how I feel too.
I know. How does that mess you guys up during the holiday season with work and everything else? Does Bosch do any kind of like plant shutdowns or stuff like that? I know a lot of manufacturers do maintenance this kind of this part of the season. So
Yeah, so I don't know too much about the plant schedule as much as I did when I was working in automotive for Bosch, but I think they go pretty continuously. I know the corporate office, we've got Christmas Eve and Christmas, and then we've got New Year's Eve and New Year's Day off, and then wherever you want to use your PTO. So for me, Friday, and I'm not coming back until January 6th.
that might be an interesting day to come back. I have to say, you never know what you're
Yeah,
coming into on those days.
yeah, it's been crazy. It's been pretty chaotic too. A lot of commercial business. So I deal a bit with our water source heat pump business, particularly commercial projects and things like that. And a lot of those are trying to wrap up at the end of 24, and of course they're pushing it, right till the very end to get those
Oh yeah.
quotes in.
Now, have you dealt with any of the transition part of the water source side since you deal with commercial? Because I know you guys started switching a lot of the stuff over to 454B over the summer. I remember when I went to FHP in October of last year, they'd said that was kind of the plan, was a rolling change starting about the middle of the year to try to get them all ready for the new year.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a lot of what the work really is getting the models loaded into our software, getting it ready to rate and quote, and of course, staggering those releases with the different products. So, basically, we've got one or two models coming out here in the next week, and everybody wants to get those quotes in right away. So, um, the CF, which is the commercial flex, is out, and then the next tier, which is CP commercial performance, that's coming out soon in the next couple of weeks. So, of course, everybody wants to quote that before the end of the year.
Well, and I actually just quoted a 5-ton and a 6-ton CF for a job down here that they kind of got passed over through us, through Aaron and his team.
Oh, nice.
Where I work, it's an interesting kind of setup at the moment because we're still trying to grow up and figure out who we are, even though we're growing like crazy. Insight is really more commercial, industrial, plan and spec. The side of it I'm on is really specializing in residential light commercial through our parts division. So I do residential new construction, multifamily, but then a lot of what I focus on is the add-on replacement side. So account execs are trying to sell it on the plan and spec side, but I'm trying to go back in and replace stuff and put our stuff back in where it wasn't before, or I'm replacing what we sold, 10, 15, 20 years ago. So I kind of have to
Hmm.
I see both sides of it because depending on what I'm replacing, I'm dealing with the same lead times that the plan and spec guys are. So there's a
Yep.
lot of crossover there I've seen. And it's interesting on the residential side, we're kind of just autopilot for the next, 2 weeks almost, because most contractors really slow down this time of year too. But on the commercial side of stuff, it's still just everything's trying to get in by the end of the year. And it's two different worlds. And it's interesting kind of watching us figure out how to marry it together.
Yeah, for sure.
So looking kind of through, I have to say, stalked your LinkedIn. That's usually what happens before you do shows like this. So I thought it was interesting. You had interned at Bosch before you ever ended up here. or ever ended up there. So kind of
Yeah.
walk me through, kind of a bit of your career path and how you got to Bosch and then how you ended up in HVAC.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. So I graduated from Michigan State with a bachelor's in mechanical engineering, and very end of the year, I didn't have any job prospects lined up, but we have kind of a capstone project at the end, and there's like an engineering fair, and I ended up meeting a couple of recruiters from Bosch who really liked the project that I was working on. And I was like, you know what, this seems like a good place to work. So I ended up applying and getting an internship with Bosch, and I worked in our diesel systems division as a supplier quality engineer at a welding facility in Kentwood, which is just outside of
Okay.
Grand Rapids, Michigan. And that was a great time being in the plant. Very different environment too. I don't know anybody who's worked in a welding plant before, but all year round, long sleeves and long pants, steel toe boots, eyewear, everything like that. It
Oh,
gets
I don't
hot,
doubt it.
man. Yeah. So diesel systems, welding, we were clearly working on exhaust systems. And that was a pretty interesting time for me. Supplier quality too, very hands-on with our suppliers of different components. But eventually I had to get a full-time job after that. So I ended up working for Chrysler for a few years in interior trim, of all things. And that ended up being a lot of plastic injection molding. Um, and that was pretty good. Definitely a lot to learn with plastic injection, and a lot of really good uses for it. But eventually, I wanted a little bit more and a little bit more technical, so I went back for a master's at University of Michigan for mechanical engineering.
How did that transition go over with everybody? Spartan to Wolverine.
Uh, yeah, a house divided, and I guess a person divided. I always like to think about what my dad says. It's always a good day when a team from
There
Michigan
you go.
wins and/or Ohio State loses.
There you go.
So yeah, I decided it was time for a career change, and I thought, you know what? Um, Bosch was a really good company when I worked there as an intern. I think I want to go back, and so that's what I did. And I'd say a lot of the motivation behind it was, and we can kind of see now, looking back on what happened to Chrysler. They've changed hands
Yep.
quite a few times, so that's a lot to go through as an employee, particularly. But one of the cool things about Bosch is we're a private organization, so those sorts of changes don't happen that frequently. And it's also kind of nice too that we're primarily owned by a nonprofit, so all of our proceeds essentially go to charity. Whereas when you're working for Chrysler, it's kind of like, yeah, there's a guy at the top, and you're
Yeah.
just helping him get
No,
rich.
and it makes sense, and it's different when you work for a company that's either employee owned or, truly owned, where it's about benefiting the whole instead of the individual.
Yeah, and that feels kind of like a weight off my shoulders in a way. It's like, this is just a little bit easier to get by with the day to day. Like I know I'm doing something good.
Well, and I think, you'd said you'd came from EV stuff as well, and then going into a place like Bosch, obviously they're already a company that's known for innovation across the board. So did the cultural environment change at all in terms of going to a place that really is known for innovation? Not that where you were before wasn't, but did that kind of change how you went about your day to day?
Yeah, that was definitely an important factor too. And I definitely like the environment within Bosch. I mean, we definitely have a handful of nerds, and it's pretty cool to just geek out about technology sometimes. And we do have a very diverse group of individuals with lots of different backgrounds. So it's very interesting to talk to different people. One of the cool ones is we had somebody who was an English major with a degree in journalism, who was doing R&D for fans, so cooling fans for automotive cars, and his original background was journalist. I mean, what a wild transition that is.
So I was a history major. I wised up about a few years in and realized I wasn't going to get very far with the history degree. So I also got an entrepreneurial business degree, but I spent many years doing sports journalism as a side job. So it's funny how many people you see that actually have little things like that have been all throughout their life, but their job has nothing to do with what they're really passionate about. It's always interesting to see that in people. So, how did you end up in the HVAC side of Bosch?
Yeah. So, like I said, I came back into Bosch. I was in automotive. I was an engine cooling fan um, as a release engineer. Um, and so, what happened? It was around 2020. Things were starting to ramp down in the automotive sector. I was working on a lot of the sedans at the time from GM and Ford. And if you know now, they pretty much disappeared. And at the time, I kind of saw the writing on the wall and I was like, this doesn't look good. We don't need this many engineers in this group, and all my products are disappearing. So one of my managers came to me and said, hey, there's a position open in R&D, but it's in Massachusetts. Are you interested? I said, am I going to have a job if I don't? Yeah, I'm interested. So I made that move, and it was R&D in thermal systems, and the new group, we were doing a lot with next generation EVs, so looking at heat pump applications in EVs. So that's how I kind of got started, from cooling fans to pumps to
Gotcha.
refrigerant systems. And then eventually I saw a really cool opportunity to work with Bosch's HVAC group, um, also on the East Coast in Watertown, Massachusetts, and I took it.
Now, when you walked into HVAC, did you know exactly where you were going to fit in there, or was it kind of this is a new adventure? I want to find what fits me the best and try to get stuck in there.
I think it's really been a make your own adventure kind of thing. I have an interesting title. It's Digital Solutions Lead, and we kind of joke around like, what does that really mean? Like kind of the Barney Stinson, like what does that mean? But it's difficult to describe sometimes. Like I said, I work a little bit with the commercial business with water source heat pump. I work on digital tools. So one of the ones I'm working to pilot right now is a lead management program as part of our partner program, the
Nice.
HC Pro program. We're doing a pilot in the Northeast. And then a lot to do with learning management. And of course, being on shows like this.
Well, and I'm happy you're here.
Yeah.
As you started getting into HVAC, one of the major transitions that you were walking right into is you probably walked right into SEER 2 transition, and now you're walking right into A2L. So, what kind of, as once you found out, since you're in refrigeration systems, what were some of the first things that you started to look into as you knew you were going to be changing refrigerants, and kind of where does your process start with, all right, we're changing refrigerants, where do you look to re-engineer first?
Yeah. So this was kind of funny because coming from R&D, we're quite a few years ahead. Like the automotive cycle, you're looking maybe 10 years down the road. You've got a new model year every 5. So what was really interesting was coming from automotive, we were where I was in R&D, we were looking even further ahead down the road. And so basically the A2L transition in automotive for me had already happened, right? And so it was kind of an interesting thing jumping into um, residential HVAC, where we're going through the transition. And I'm kind of looking like, I already know what the next transition is. And that's where I'm still kind of thinking too, which I think is wild. So a little background, automotive, they switched to from 134A to 1234YF.
Which half of 454B's blend with 32?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I was very familiar with 1234YF, but even that was phasing out because those chemicals decompose into PFAS or PFOAs, the quote unquote
Gotcha.
forever chemicals. So those are eventually going to get phased out as well. So what was wild was when I was in automotive, we were looking at R290 and CO2 as the next potential refrigerant. And of course, when I was in that group, we were looking, 10 years down the road, what's going to be the next.
Well, and I'm curious. I think there's already the rumors that those two are what's coming to even residential eventually. We'll see.
Yeah, and I would say, I mean, get used to the
Yep.
cycle, right? I think we're going to change, and then we'll be coming out with a new one again. But I want to say also, it's nothing new, right? We've changed from
Yep.
12 to 22 to 410A. I mean, this is kind of more or less a standardized
Well,
process
and I
at
think the
this point.
biggest thing with this one is this is the first one where the residential side is going to one that is considered mildly flammable. And because of that, there has been, trying to think of the right term for the amount of unknowns that have been out there, or the amount of things that have been put out there to just either scare a homeowner or scare a contractor or get them, more scared of the way it's going. Um, I think there's been a lot of misinformation out there. People thought you're going to have a unit in the back of the truck and it's a rolling bomb.
Definitely not. Yeah. So yeah, it's very interesting when it comes to flammability and the science behind it. And that was one of the things that I was kind of involved on when we were looking even further down the road at something like propane. And when you look at our 454B, that is hardly flammable. I mean, it was engineered not to be flammable, essentially. And it's kind of interesting that we've created this new classification. It's not just A2, it's
Yep.
A2L, which is the lower side of flammability. So it's kind of even outside of that A2 range. But we're constantly evolving and trying to reduce the amount of charge that we're using in refrigerant systems, because refrigerant is expensive on its own. And reducing the amount you're using is also decreasing the amount of energy you would have if you were to have a thermal event. But when you look at the ignition energy of something like 454B, it's so considerably low that the risk is pretty minimal, we'll say.
Well, and I think, as the building codes and stuff are changing, I think the building codes have scared people a little bit about it too, talking about fireproof chases and other different things in residential homes and different buildings. So I think in some ways, I feel like there's been a mountain made out of a molehill, if you could say that.
Hmm.
I think that's probably the best one for it, I'd have to
Yeah,
say, because that's really the way it seemed. It's just when I first heard that we were going to a flammable refrigerant, my first thing is like, oh, geez. But then as soon as you start really digging into it, you're like, well, isn't that bad. But then you see all the memes that get put online where the unit's blowing up and the technician's blown to bits. And it's like, guys, that's not how this is going to happen. You look at like
yeah,
storage requirements, because one of the things we had to look into storage wise was, how much can we keep in a warehouse depending on, or how much can we keep anywhere depending on the building. And you can keep, what is it, 20,000 pounds in a building without a sprinkler system. I think you're okay.
yeah. I think you're going to be okay. And thinking about the next potential change, which would be to
Yep.
R290 or CO2. I mean, R290 is propane. That's
Yeah.
definitely flammable. But a lot of people don't realize where it's already used. You
Mm-hmm.
go to a gas station, packaged ice machine, that's R290. If you go to a bar, right, holiday season, you're at a bar, you look underneath that bar, all of those coolers are R290. Bar doesn't blow up. You go to the grocery store, the walk-in coolers, R290. So it's out there. People are using it.
Well,
People are
they're walking
servicing it.
around. They've been in, how many times have they been in a distribution warehouse? Guess what all those, well, not as much now, but guess what all those forklifts are running on? Propane. It's running around right in front of you.
Propane. Hmm.
But it's because it's changing the norm, I think, is what it really turns down to, and
Yeah,
it just
definitely.
flips that mindset. And especially if they've not had any experience, if it's primarily a residential technician that's had no commercial experience or hasn't really dealt with it, I don't think a lot of times technicians, as they're first getting into this, realize, one, how many refrigerants there are and how many different places they're used and what they're used for.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I think training is key too, and getting yourself more comfortable with it. Um, Taking some classes, definitely hands-on. Working with it. Um, but the other thing too is, I mean, a lot of the things that we've been doing about atmospheric release de minimis. I mean, those are all part of the safety.
Trade Crew, are your customers ready for year-round comfort? The Bosch Home Comfort IDS Ultra is the ultimate solution for all seasons. This cold climate heat pump delivers reliable heating even when it's down to negative 13 degrees Fahrenheit outside, and delivers efficient cooling all summer long. With Bosch's enhanced vapor injection compressor technology, your clients stay comfortable no matter the weather. Plus, with ultra-quiet operation at just 60 decibels or lower, it's powerful, efficient, and practically silent. Bosch IDS Ultra, comfort that works as hard as you do. And now, back to the show. Trevor, my fault. I don't know how I just clicked your mute. Sorry.
All right, I'm back.
I have to start that part over. Talking about atmosphere.
Yeah. Yeah, I was saying, the things that we're doing here for de minimis and minimizing release of refrigerants, these are all things that are also going to protect you from a flammable situation, right? We're using our vacuum lines. We're recovering the refrigerant. Everything's essentially sealed, right? The only risk you should have is, you've closed the system up and you've taken the hose off, and there's a tiny amount that comes out of the hose.
And the other thing too, like we said, we've talked about how long they've been used. A lot of these refrigerants, we're going to it. It's not a new refrigerant. People have been dealing with it for a long period of time. Maybe just not here, but somewhere in the world, this has been the primary refrigerant for some period of time. And it's proved reliable to be used in these situations.
Yeah. And you look at R454B, and that's a blend of 32 and 1234YF. And what a lot of people might not realize is 410A is a blend of R32 and 125.
Just 125 is way, way higher on the GWP scale.
Yeah. Actually, it's kind of funny. The 125 is a flame retardant or a flame suppressant. So it can be used in industrial applications for a fire suppression system. And that's the only reason that 410A wasn't flammable, was because it was damping the flammability of R32.
Now, see, that I would not have known. I know if I'm ever on Who Wants to Make a Deal, I know my phone a friend for refrigerant question.
Yeah, there you go.
Or whatever show it was that had phone a friends. It might have been Let's Make a Deal. It was one of them.
Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?
That's it. There it is.
Mm-hmm.
You can tell I don't watch a lot of TV shows anymore. Game shows are always funny though. So we've kind of talked about A2L for a bit. So really the first thing coming from HVAC, which is really the main reason we're even having this show today for Bosch with an A2L refrigerant, is the IDS Ultra. I'll let you go into some of that and how it came about. How did IDS Ultra get on the map? I know it's part of the DOE Cold Climate Challenge, but walk me through kind of how you guys started to develop that product, make it kind of your flagship for your A2L transition on the IDS side.
Yeah, so I might not be the totally best person to talk about the development, since I'm relatively new to the team. So a lot of the development had happened prior to me. But like you said, it was part of the DOE Cold Climate Challenge. And essentially, the big requirements there are 100% capacity at 5 degrees Fahrenheit and operating down to minus 13 degrees Fahrenheit. And a good way to think about the energy or the DOE Cold Climate Challenge is it's kind of like an engineering specification where the Department of Energy came in and said, hey, I want a product that will meet these specifications. Can you guys design it? And that's essentially what we did. And the way that I like to think about this, because it seems like a very innovative product, and I don't want to underpin that. But at the same time, there's elements of this product that are also kind of incremental in a way. So it's still an IDS that's inverter ducted split. So we have the underpinnings of our inverter technology, running the compressor at 1% increments to adjust the load based on the conditions of the indoor coil. The big highlight here is the addition of enhanced vapor injection. And this is a kind of a tweak of a flavor of something that's been in our mini split products before. So if you look at the Climate 5000, we've got regular performance and max performance. And what's the low end rating for the max performance? Minus 22 Fahrenheit for heating. And what's enabling that is flash tank vapor injection. So the same kind of cycle here, where we're taking some extra refrigerant that we've split after the condenser, and we're going to re-inject that back into the compressor. And we're going to leverage that and our refrigerant cycle to be able to get more absorption from our outdoor unit. So we've taken that, the next level from flash tank is enhanced vapor injection. This is going to use an extra expansion valve and a plate heat exchanger. And the goal here is we're going to split the refrigerant coming off of the condenser. We're going to take a small amount of it and put it through an expansion device to cool it down. And we're going to cross it with that main flow in that plate heat exchanger. And essentially what we're doing is increasing our subcooling. And that means when we go through our regular expansion device with that main flow, we're much further to the left on our pH diagram. And that means at the outdoor unit, we can absorb more heat. And that's what's really enabling our cold climate here. And then we've got a couple other additions too. We've got a new fan shroud that's lifted up to give us more access to more of the coil so that we've got more area for absorption.
I want to interject right there. To this day, I've always been curious why no one has ever lifted the fan up out of the coil before.
Yeah, so I was thinking about this the other day too. I was like, why would you?
I've always felt like we've wasted 10 to 20% of capacity in coils forever.
Yeah, and I think the primary reason is most of those products have been cooling focused. And when it's cooling focused, your outdoor ambient is already lower than your condenser temperature, right? So you've got hot refrigerant going through the condenser. Maybe it's 100 degrees out, but your refrigerant is still 110, 115. So it's still going to cool down, right? It's still going to condense. Yep. So you don't need really the airflow to do it because you've already got a big enough delta T outside in most cases for cooling. But that scenario kind of flips when you're talking about absorbing heat now. You need, because the density is so low of air at those lower temperatures, you need more flow to go over the coil.
Makes sense.
All right.
I never even would have thought of it that way, but I'm not the engineer. That's why you're here.
I guess so.
You get to give everybody light bulb moments all day.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, taller shroud. Also, we've got new blades on there to decrease noise as well.
So one question I had is, and maybe there's more coming, but looking through the matchup sheets, you guys only created a 5-ton outdoor and a 4 and 5-ton air handler or matching coils. Is there a reason you didn't create a 3-ton and mirror kind of your other IDS platforms that had at least, a 3 and a 5, unless it was light that was 2, 3, 5?
Well, I'd say there's a couple things. If you try to do both at the same time, you can't be as fast. And so we went for the one with the largest market share that we saw of as full furnace replacement in northern climates, right? And so for us, our market analysis told us that was going to be the 5-ton. What can I say? So it should be coming. I would expect to see a 3-ton by 26, maybe.
Gotcha.
But yeah, if you try to do with a very lean team and organization, if you try to do two at the same time, you can't be first. And one of the cool things about Bosch and the Cold Climate Challenge is we were first to market.
Well, and that makes sense because your market share for where this is going to go is primarily larger tonnage anyway, just because of heating load.
Mm-hmm.
So no, that makes sense. So I've got contractors up in kind of the high country of North Carolina that when they first saw this was coming out, they were pumped. And then when I had told them, I said, all right, well, we've got a 5-ton outdoor and then a 4 and a 5-ton air handler. And they said, well, where's the rest of it? And I said, it's probably coming, but this is what's coming now.
Yeah. That's what's out now is 5.
Yeah, so I was digging through matchup sheets, like, well, I've seen where they put, an 18 SEER or a 20 SEER on a 3-ton air handler. Maybe there's an option in here somewhere. And I started going through matchups. I'm like, okay, I've got to ask this question. I said, and hopefully it's not a one that feels like a stab of the knife in the engineer. But I was just curious because I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, no, I mean, when resources, particularly engineering resources, are limited, you've got to make choices, and that was a choice that had to be made. So for us, when you look at the market share, 5 was the answer, and then 3 should follow.
The other thing you discussed were the sound isolation and the silent blade technology. Now, did you guys work on trying to make it quieter because there's potentially, are you going faster speeds on your outdoor fan because of having to pull more air across the coil? What's up, trade crew? Are you tired of playing microfarad hide and seek with your service truck inventory? I think it's time that you tested out the Turbo 200 family from Amrad Manufacturing and Global to Source, where efficiency meets durability and finding the right capacitor is never a game of chance. With the Turbo family of universal capacitors, you're not just getting any regular capacitor. No. You're getting the HVAC industry's version of a superhero cape. Reliable, efficient, ready to save the day, these ruggedly tested, made in the USA capacitors are prepared for whatever you run into during your service calls. These truly unique and industry-changing universal capacitors allow you to replace over 200 individual sizes with just their 4 models: the Turbo 200, Turbo 200X, Turbo Mini, and Turbo Mini Oval. And did I mention they have a 5-year warranty? Seriously, what are you waiting for? Do the math and upgrade your truck stock setup today, because the Turbo family has got you covered. Visit the HVAC R&D Vendor Hub and click on the Global to Source link to request training from a local account executive in your market. Easy peasy. Amrad Manufacturing, where performance meets perfection. Because in the world of HVAC, good enough isn't in our vocabulary. It's turbo or nothing. And now, back to the show.
So I don't know particularly about the speed of the fan, but I know that noise has always been a pretty big issue.
Oh yeah,
particularly with heat pumps.
hands down.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of a good answer. I don't know if there's a speed difference, but I know that we've made changes to the blades, and basically what you can see on our blade is we've got serrations on the trailing edge, and essentially those are going to create kind of a harmonic imbalance, and create canceling noise waves. And of course, we love to use the analogy, this is kind of like the trailing edge of an owl's wing, right? You've got these serrated feathers on the end of their wings as they swoop down, and really what's happening is the air, as it moves over there, some places the wing is a little bit longer, and some places it's a little bit shorter, and it creates sound waves coming off that trailing edge that are out of sync, and then they cancel.
Okay, that's nuts.
Yes. Sound is definitely black magic. The deeper you get into it, the weirder it gets, and the more difficult it is to explain.
I almost, left speechless in some ways, because I'm just trying to think about how that works, because that's crazy and interesting. I've never even thought about it going that deep into, essentially you're using sound to cancel sound, which that in itself makes you have to think about it a minute.
Yeah. So the blade is definitely a component of decreasing the noise, but actually rolling back to vapor injection, this is one of the things that helps decrease noise as well. So when you're running the vapor injection cycle in our unit, this is going to kick on around 50 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit, which seems kind of warm, right? You would say, well, why do we need to turn it on so soon? But the real answer is when you start to use the vapor injection cycle, because we're re-injecting some of that vapor back into the compressor, we're increasing the compressor's efficiency. And that actually allows you to run the compressor about 10% slower for the same capacity. And of course, with a compressor, slower will mean less noise.
Slower, less noise. It also kind of allows it to acclimatize to itself a little bit, which is less wear and tear on it also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Less wear and tear, less number of cycles. There was something else, but I can't remember.
Well, we'll switch gears and then
Yeah.
maybe it'll trigger it. So I know another thing that Bosch is huge on is connectivity, the Easy Air app. I assume that's going to work just fine with it on BCC 110 controls. Are there any new features when it comes to that kind of connectivity that Ultra is kind of bringing out into the marketplace that we may see throughout IDS over the next couple of years?
Yeah, so there's a few changes here. So the IDS Ultra is available in communicating mode. And one of the nice things is this will give us a few extra parameters on the Easy Air app. So for the technician side, if we're enabling our communication between the indoor unit and the outdoor unit with our two-wire communication, this will tell us the fan speed and the current draw of the indoor fan unit or indoor air handler. So we've got a couple extra features there. The rest of the app, pretty much the same. You can register the unit just as you would before. You can jump in and look at live parameters. And of course, there's going to be a few new parameters now entailing that vapor injection cycle. So we're going to have a couple extra thermistors at the plate heat exchanger, inlet and outlet. And then we'll have another EEV. This is going to be EEVC.
Which, because everybody wants to hear there's more expansion valves than anything. Sorry, everybody, but there's a good reason.
There is
It's
a good
not there
reason.
just to
Yes.
it's not just there to make you have to worry that it's going to fail.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, to this day I've never changed an EEV in any brand's unit.
Mm.
I've never had one fail.
But I can say that there's good news on the vapor injection cycle. So where we make the split, where we branch off that refrigerant to go into that expansion valve, we're actually using a much smaller line diameter, which is effectively acting like its own metering device. And so for the reason for doing that is if your expansion valve were to fail in the open position and basically enhanced vapor injection is stuck on, you can't put too much refrigerant through that bypass loop. Basically, you're using that smaller diameter coil as a metering device.
Gotcha.
So a nice little added extra benefit there.
Well, and it's a nice little safeguard to be able to tell, a contractor, like, why should I use your low climate heat pump over someone else's? Well, that's one of those little ones you pull out of the back pocket when you need it at the end and be like, well, it also does this.
Yeah. It's not going to fail into a terrible state. It's going to fail into a state where it's still functional.
Another major thing that we're seeing with the A2L push, cold climate push, rebates, tax credits. I won't make you get into a whole bunch of that because I've got another show lined up where I'll talk about some of that. What do you see? Do you see this kind of also being really the leading charge with this? Is it also gives a great potential tax credit benefit to homeowners moving to this technology away from gas?
Yeah. I mean, the big thing is 25C. So 30% of the project cost up to $2,000. So the IDS Ultra, of course, qualifies for that. And particularly it qualifies for, I want to say, I got to remember the numbers here. Should be Energy Star Cold Climate version 6.2, I think, if we get into the nitty gritty there. But it's also going to qualify for a lot of state incentives too, as well. And a lot of that money has been pushed out on the state level as well. And of course, utility companies will be giving out incentives as well.
So the contractor that was asking me about the stuff up in the high country was a lot of that was, one of the power co-ops they work with does a tax credit that they felt this cold climate heat pump would be perfect for.
Mm-hmm.
So have you started to receive any contractor feedback from test models? How long did you guys get to test this thing over the last couple of years, and really how much feedback were you able to get before?
Yeah, so we had a couple of field trials, and I know one of the gentlemen who has one. He's in Bedford, New Hampshire, and I was actually at his house. We were also doing a water heater install, And it was last winter, and it had been in for quite a while. And I remember I was standing out there with another gentleman, and the system was running. And I looked down and I was like, oh, I didn't even realize it was going. And it was going and going. And a few minutes later, it went into defrost, and I was like, why are my feet wet? I didn't even hear it kick over. But yeah, so from him, positive. I mean, he went through all of last winter with it, and it was great, and he's going through this winter as well. I haven't heard too much about other users yet. I know we've got at least 2 that I saw go in this week, I believe on Long Island, and maybe 1 in Massachusetts. I also had a gentleman come into the Experience Center in Watertown maybe a couple months ago, and I showed him around and talked to him about some of the products, and he was very keen on the Ultra, and he's been waiting and waiting. So I think he's about to buy one as well. So there's definitely people out there. They're definitely excited. I mean, from installation standpoint, I mean, this is pretty straightforward. You've got your line set, you braze it, just like you would a regular IDS. And then similar things, we've got a couple of dip switches there for cooling and for defrost, or not defrost, dehumidification.
Well, and to be honest, I mean, IDS is, for inverter heat pumps, it is so straightforward. That's one of my favorite things about moving contractors to this, because initially, inverters still scare people. They shouldn't. They've been around for a very, 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 very long time in terms of compressor technology, but it's still just, there's still a lot of people that are just weary of it because they've not really messed with it. They're not used to it. And they're used to it being, this, $8,000 outdoor unit that's over-engineered to the teeth with this, inverter compressor that no homeowner could ever afford. And now all of a sudden they're seeing it in base model product, and it's like, wait a minute, what is this? And then they see that board and they freak out again. But it's the way the industry is going. And really, over the last couple of years, I've seen as more and more people move to inverters from staged product. At first, they're so afraid of the transition, but then it happens. They're like, why didn't I do this years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they hear a completely different kind of feedback from homeowners, because most homeowners have never had the technology that actually adjusts and keeps the home comfortable based on the system knowing what's going on.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a whole different ballgame.
Trade Crew contractors, when you need a system that balances performance with affordability, Bosch IDS Lite delivers. Offering up to 16 SEER2 and 9 HSPF2, these systems ensure optimal comfort while maximizing energy efficiency. With whisper quiet operation, the IDS Lite's inverter heat pumps and matching air handler or dual fuel options are perfect for homeowners who want comfort without the noise. Plus, your customers will love how much they save on their energy bills thanks to Bosch's variable speed capacity technology. It's a win for you and your customers. And let's be honest, who doesn't like winning? Bosch IDS Lite, the ideal choice for contractors who want the job done right the first time. Available now at Inside Partners in the Carolinas, and if you're looking for your local distributor, check out the resources through the Bosch link in the HVACR&D.com vendor hub. And now, back to the show. Thank you. A lot of great knowledge about IDS Ultra. If you guys want more information on that stuff, you can always go to Bosch Home Comfort's website. You can also check a link through the HVAC R&D vendor hub. But as we start to close this one, throughout this year, I've been doing a segment called Give More in 2024 that was actually sponsored by Bosch Home Comfort for the last couple of months as well. And it's really just kind of just a couple of questions to talk about giving back to the trade community and different things like that. So I know Bosch has a massive presence in the HVAC industry. And I was going to say, what are some different ways they give back to the trade community from your perspective? I know a lot of people have listened to this show. They know Bosch actually donated some equipment with us up in Chicago during AHR.
Mm-hmm.
But
I love hearing kind of from you guys in the company. What are things that you see the company doing to give back to the trades in their community?
Yeah, that's definitely one that even myself, I try to keep an eye out for. And I bring that up to people within marketing and sales and say, hey, we got an opportunity over here to donate some equipment and things like that, especially to schools. We're also working and partnering with a company that's building our new generation of test carts, and these will be available for our live fire trainings. But they also provide products to schools as well, and that's one of the things that we want to be more involved in supporting the workforce.
As a professional in this industry, what advice would you give to those that are looking to contribute to or join the next generation of HVAC tradespeople, engineers, or those in our community?
Ooh. I would just say go do it. Like, I'm a very hands-on person, which is outside the norm for some engineers, right? But I think one of the things that really drew me to the industry was I actually did a lot of work myself when I was in automotive, and I did a lot of stuff with the Bosch HVAC products, and getting involved firsthand with it. I don't know, I just kind of fell in love with it. So I mean, I would get out there and do it and start working, and you'll probably realize you love it.
Well, and I was going to say, talking about your early career being in the welding manufacturing plant and seeing all that stuff, I could tell based on the way you talked about it, you were hands on with those guys a lot. And I feel like that's kind of helped steer the way you think about engineering products since then in a lot of ways.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I mean, one of the things that was so useful was being there and working on the line and seeing the kind of problems that people would have. And one of the things that's kind of cool about my job, like I said, a little bit of the Barney Stinson, what do I do? But I go around to different contractors and I interview some, and I like to go to the job and see how the install actually goes and like see what their problems are. Because those are things I'm not going to figure out in the lab, right? And by talking to people and understanding their problems, we can come up with better solutions. So that'd be my advice to the desk professionals: is get out there in the field and talk to some people.
Well, and I will say Bosch has always been very open to feedback and discussion about how to make a product better. There's a lot of manufacturers that are not at all. So that's been a breath of fresh air from, this side of the business. So I'll close it up with this one. Holidays are always a great time to reflect. What would you say is one big highlight from the past year, one both personally, one professionally?
Yeah. So professionally, I think the thing that was a big highlight was moving to Bosch HVAC division, or Bosch Home Comfort Group. I've really enjoyed it. I really feel like I fit in. This is a great team that we've got here. I can say that because I'm new. But there's a lot of exciting stuff coming, definitely, for Bosch Home Comfort. And then for me, personally, the thing that I'm most excited for is my wife and I are expecting. So in March, I'm going to be a dad. So that's something very exciting to look forward to into next year.
Congratulations, man.
Yeah, thank you.
We had some friends of the family that I work with just find out they were expecting. They've been trying for a long time. So I think there's been some good miracles the last couple of months.
Actually, funny thing, there must be something in the water at Watertown, because I'm probably about the 7th or 8th in our office to have a kid within a year.
I think it just means you guys are happy and enjoy your jobs, and your spouse is happy because you're happy and enjoying your jobs, and that just makes for a positive home environment thanks to a fairly, mostly positive work environment. So things go hand in hand more than people ever give it credit.
Yeah, that's probably it too. Good work-life balance.
That's right. Well, Trevor, thank you so much for taking some time to speak with me and the trade crew. Lastly, kind of where can listeners connect with you and Bosch on social media?
I don't know, actually.
Go to LinkedIn and go to Trevor. You can't miss the mustache.
That's true. You can't miss the mustache.
I'm sorry we don't have video for that.
I got to remember what our normal hashtag is. Hashtag Bosch HVAC.
That's one of them. And then Instagram is at Bosch Home Comfort _US is the main one, which you'll see that tagged in a whole bunch of stuff throughout December. I've been doing 31 days of Bosch, so that's been fun. Trying to not ever be repetitive. Luckily, you guys have all kinds of cool things about your products I can talk about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I got to get those memorized. I got to be more on the social.
There's way too many of them to try to memorize if you just type in Bosch. You're like, oh, no, too many. So go find Trevor on social media. Go find him on LinkedIn. Give him a good engineering question so he can blow your mind too. If you're not following HVAC R&D online, you can find me on Instagram and TikTok at HVAC.R&D. You can also find the show on LinkedIn, Tradehounds, and Facebook as the HVAC R&D podcast. Thank you for listening on your favorite platform. Please make sure to smash the like and subscribe button wherever you are listening. Like and rate the show. Leave me a review. If you love it, tell me you love it. If you hate it, tell me what to fix. Share the show with your friends and your trade crew. Don't forget to check out the website and swag shop. And as always, have a great week, trade crew. Very, very Merry Christmas. But I'll catch y'all soon. Peace.